How to redesign your business after the lockdown, part 2. At the start of the pandemic, I had a conversation with Peter de Keyser, who is a former chief economist from Belgium and now running his own company, where we explored different scenarios after the lockdown in terms of economic growth. And right now, I see that many of the businesses, people we work with, having those questions about what would it look like after the lockdown. And the single question that I'm always looking for to answer is, where is value next? Because as a result of technology change, but now as a result of the pandemic, you also see that value is changing. And companies are asking themselves, maybe I can continue my business, or can I restart my business? And what would it look like? Are we going to moving back to normal, or is it a new normal? And what actually is a new normal? And I think this question addresses the real question very well. And that's the question about, when the growth returns, will it be driven by the same forces, or has the virus changed customer behavior patterns? So is the growth that's going to come back for sure have the same features, or will it be driven by different forces? So then we also know, when we look at our business model right now, what will be the shift that we need to make with our business model. So let's look back at the first lockdown, the first experience we had back in 2020 in March. And some people said this is the new normal and we need to take advantage of that. But what was this new normal about? Well, the new normal was based on physical limitations due to the pandemic. So a lot of companies could not be accessed, a lot of shops could not be accessed because of those physical limitations, or the 1.5 meter economy, so to say. And therefore, you saw that a lot of companies needed to be creative on how it would be still possible for their broken business model to perform and to make sure that you can still serve your customers. And we've seen an enormous digital acceleration of businesses. So digital would mean that a move towards those digital technologies to drive value creation and serve your current customers, but also new customer segments. And a list of those winners who understood that game, that is, of course, in the meals to go. I mean, a lot of people pushed the button and had their food brought to their homes. And we also see that online retailers did a very good job, and they had waiting lists in order to serve their customers because it was hard to get access to shops. We also learned that companies started to organize digital events where we could not visit any countries anymore, not go to exhibitions. So companies like NEP Media and Media Monks found their way into a digital event design. And you saw that for those who went to supermarkets, a lot of shelves were empty, so they did a good job. But also a lot of Zoom meetings and Microsoft Teams. And I think never than ever before, we were also creative to create new kind of backgrounds for making those meetings a little bit more interesting, instead of looking at your wardrobe or maybe your home interior. And we also learned that you had to design your workspace at home. So you needed to be able to find a way to work from home. So you needed to have more equipment and maybe coffee, etc., etc. Then also companies in the hand sanitizing business were in shock, because never ever before they were able to sell so many sanitizing products. And those products needed to be shipped. So shipping and delivery companies were doing well. And when you were at home, you were bored, then you see that streaming was your way out to have something to do while you could not leave home. And then, not to be forgotten, those are the liquor stores who do a very good job. And on the other side, we also had losers in this game. So for sure, those brick and mortar stores who had not anything digital in terms of delivery options or websites, those really had a hard job, because it was impossible for customers to reach them and for them to reach customers. But also the event industries and all the suppliers and also DJ had a very, very bad time and still unclear when they will be in business. Not if we talk about those aviation companies who are now supported by governments. And we also started to learn that when you're traveling, it would be maybe not that busy on beaches. That's actually no fun. And when we're not commuting anymore, then travel is not happening. So therefore, we don't need any gas at all. And restaurants were empty because they were closed. And then the question is for you, like, when was the last time that you stayed at a hotel? So universities also had big time were losing money as a result of those executive programs, where also people were moving to different countries and paid big time for their tuition fees. And also manufacturing companies, as a result of people who were ill, they could not deliver at the same speed that they're used to. So yes, we saw a lot of losers in this game. But let's look at the winners, and maybe we can look into some numbers here to get a feel of what that looked like. Well, here is an overview of companies that were doing well. So for sure, the summary, you see that those communication services like T-Mobile, Tencent, Facebook, Netflix, but also information technology and companies into consumer discretionaries like Tesla, JD, and healthcare for sure. And I was wondering, what is the top 5 companies who did the best job during this pandemic? And number 1 is Amazon. Maybe no surprise, because Amazon anticipated that it could spend like $4 billion to keep its logistics running during the coronavirus. I mean, they could ship anything to anybody around this planet. Then Microsoft. Maybe you could question that Microsoft would not be used that much as Microsoft Teams or be grown that much if we would not have had to sit at home and be able to work and communicate with our colleagues. Then we have Apple, who managed to increase their revenue despite of all their shops were closed, right? So all 500 stores around the world were forced to close, but they were able to still do a very, very good job. And then Tesla, maybe not of the pandemic, but more because of their increased battery life, like a big step in their like in the technology development. So that was the reason why they did a good job in 2020. And the last one in the top 5, of course, into gaming. So you see that these are the top 5. And the question is then, so what can we conclude? So what is that we learned already from the first lockdown? Well, I think one thing is the biggest change that we have experienced in customer behavior in the last 50 years. So never ever before we saw that consumers needed to act and behave very, very different. So one example is that this digital way of working and staying at home is actually right now accepted. So it will be here to stay, because this behavioral change had to last for a very long period of time. It was not a period of 2 weeks or 3 weeks, but for months we are sitting at home and we are used to work at home. We see the benefits, we also see the downsides, but for sure it is accepted by us and it is here to stay. We also see that with innovation sessions, where here in Amsterdam we would have a physical space and invite people to come here to do innovation. We now see we can also do that remote and have teams work globally on innovation. So this is here to stay. The other thing is, because of digital acceptance, we're also now much better used to order anything that we need. So you could say the rise of everything on demand is now an all-time high. And I think Uber Eats is doing well, but Uber itself in transport services still need to catch up. But to have everything available with one push on the button. That has really changed. And the last one also is that people spend much more time at home. So they also will spend more time and they will also spend more for products at home. And I hear you think, okay, so wait a minute, will this be the new normal? Well, I think it will not be the new normal. There will be a new normal that is different from what we've seen before, but when we look at the near future, not to the future, but what we've seen in the past, that's not the case. So we learned from big crises and wars and depressions that as soon as things are over, that people want to party. So we expect that there will be a sudden rise in entertainment, holidays, aviation, etc., because people would like to get back to normal and they don't want to be locked down in their homes anymore. But we do not believe that that will be the case for the next few months to come. That will be only a short period of time. So now we know all of this. How can you prepare your team and your company to understand what is next? And I believe the first thing that is truly important is to embrace the new normal. So that means that what you have experienced before the pandemic, the way you have been running your business, that now has completely changed. So consumer behavior has changed. So your value propositions have changed. The need for customers has changed. And you need to be able to explain to your team and work with your company to embrace this new normal. So yes, this new normal creates new experiences and new opportunities, but this has to be included in your vision and in the target for the new normal. And what do we mean is when you look at your new business model or new value proposition, that requires a big and a clear vision for people in your company to understand where value is next. So you need to come up with a vision to claim that this digital acceptance is here to stay, and that will be part of your vision and therefore part of new targets. For example, if we at BMI, at Business Models Inc., in the past were all about innovation sessions in a physical way, and we would fly all over the world, we could now articulate a vision where we say digital first, and then we will move, if necessary, to physical meetings, because we believe that physical meetings have a lot more creativity. And when we only work on screen to screen, we know what we know, but creativity is we don't know what we don't know. So we need to come up with a vision that shows our point of view on our way of working and on creativity, and we set targets for that. So that brings clarity in the company and clarity with your customers, so that in the end, it will be a self-fulfilling prophecy. So if you would just let go and would not spend time on this, it will probably move into a little bit before the pandemic and maybe a hybrid model. But what you need to do is to set a clear target. What do you believe is the right way to move forward in this new normal? And that is the target that you will set for your company. And therefore, that will be a self-fulfilling prophecy. The other thing is you need to move to where value is. So there's no point to sit and wait until value or business is going to happen. And we know for sure, based on the examples, the proof that I've shown you before, that this digital shift of the business model is here to stay, because there is a digital acceptance of customers and therefore customer behavior that they will use and apply this digital way of working. So if you look in more detail to your business model, then in these next building blocks, it will be about maybe new customer segments that will pop up that you can serve. For example, we now work from Amsterdam with all companies globally, and we don't need to be there physically anymore. So yes, we also have new customers we serve. It will be more convenience and speed also with the workshop. You don't need to plan ahead. You can just have the workshop tonight because you don't need to travel. And there will be new ways of revenue streams. There will be different interactions and strongly more connected different relationships. You have your digital channels, and you have to design your customer experience in a very different way because it's for online. And there also this online game of algorithms and data will start to be in play. And maybe you cannot do that alone, but that will be also done by data providing companies and partners in order for you to be able to speed up. So this digital shift is really something to be looking into because that's where value is happening. Then the other thing what we see is also about the stakeholder shift, much more moving from a shareholder perspective to a stakeholder perspective. So that means that we're engaging actually with more stakeholders to make sure they're doing well and that we achieve their goals as well. So it's not about this single person as a single company. We need and started to learn that we need to care much more about each other and see if people are doing well. And it's a complete different mind shift because we are now bound to technology. We sit at home and it's a very different setup from how we used to work inside companies. So also new business models and new concepts will pop up based on this mind shift from shareholder to stakeholder. Another one, which is a big one, is this circular shift. And with a circular shift, we mean from moving towards full responsibility of the use of resources that are valuable, and no resource, material, energy, or water is wasted. And if you look then at the traditional way of how we would do business, we now also see an acceleration of these type of business, where we design also for circularity and that we care much more about how these different products will be produced. And also when it comes to food, how that will come into our system. Because of the pandemic, what we've seen, it might be the next pandemic that is coming through our food. And we have seen all these different alternatives already. For example, like Beyond Meat that started to use very different ingredients. So compare here the Beyond Burger versus the beef burger, where the Beyond Burger only requires 99% less water, therefore 93% less land and 90% less greenhouse gas emissions and 46% less energy. So we see that this shift towards caring about each other, caring about the environment, and also design for different products and design for circularity is really going to happen. So food maker also like Kit Kat, they use plastic wrappers for paper on chocolate bars. And Elmhurst, the company who started to produce milk, not based on cow ingredients anymore, but based on nuts. And here, what's in the name is a Dutch equivalent of the Beyond Burger, meaning the vegetarian butcher. And this is something that is really happening and is not a niche market anymore, but is now going for the mass. So that means that this is value that is changing because we take much more care about ourselves, about our health, because of the pandemic. We are so much more aware of what's going on, and we don't want to end up in another pandemic or get ill. And therefore, you also see that different companies are taking on different concepts, designing better products, and also reducing the bad ingredients they have in those products. And then I looked into the lab meat, and then I thought like, if we're not sure where this pandemic was coming from, then lab meat would not be maybe the best campaign to do advertising. But for sure, to have like more plant-based ingredients is a very good alternative. And I had a conversation with the CEO, Kees Kruithof, from Live Kindly before, and I asked him the question, so how come that all of a sudden this is not a niche market anymore, but this design for circularity and those ingredients is now becoming mass market? And he said it has three reasons why this is becoming popular. So the first one is that we as people are aware of what this environment, how this is affected because of our consumption. So the graph I showed you about the water is something that people now understand. The second thing is that food technology production has improved a lot. So we hardly taste the difference between plant-based ingredients versus meat ingredients. And sorry for the meat lovers, but for some, I really don't taste the difference. And the third one is that women in households decide for what will be served at the table, and they are now aware and convinced that these new ingredients will be the next products that we will consume. So this point was about embracing where growth and value is next, and that is about digital, it is about stakeholders, and it is about more circular and healthier ingredients, especially in the food production chain. The third one is to design for growth. So if you look at your business models as a company, where do you see growth and value is next? And how you're not only focusing on the right-hand side to execute the current business models that you already have, but also start innovation and search initiatives to make sure to look into those new options. So what is your digital shift option? Like, how can you benefit from the acceleration of the digital shift? What would be a model where you look much more into stakeholders that you can maybe serve? And the third one, what about circularity? What are the initiatives that you can take on in order to improve your way of doing business and then be able to design for growth? And one more thing is we need to also be prepared for more lockdowns. And last year in January, we had a scenario planning session with a very big airport. And we wanted to show them what the world could look like in 10 years' time. So we decided to make a news report in 2030, where we showed that because of an international ban based on environmental restrictions, that it was not able to fly anymore. And they said, wow, that would never, ever happen. But now we know that such things can happen. And I think it is wise to look into a scenario planning session where you can look into, for example, at the left-hand side, like what would the society look like when we know that the level of lockdown is low and maybe the customer behavior is still the same versus when we need to stay home, where the level of lockdown is very high and that we are restricted and not able to do anything differently. So we see, for example, 4 different scenarios, and then you can design those scenarios within, or the business models within those scenarios. And I right now see that these texts are Dutch, but on the left-hand side, we see that the adoption of the new normal is low, and the level of lockdown is low, and then it's the same 2019 society. If you look at the right top, then you see if the level of adoption is high for this new normal and there's a high level of lockdown, then it's the stay at home where most of us are right now. And then the question for these other scenarios, what is it if we are having this 1.5 meter economy? What would the value and business model look like? Or if there are no restrictions anymore, but people are more conscious and they're not, and staying more at home and work at home, I think that's definitely the safety first scenario that you would like to explore. So coming back to the question, like when growth returns, will it be driven by the same forces, or has the virus changed some customer behavior? Well, I think right now we conclude that it has changed customer behavior. and therefore value, how you add value will change, and also your business models will change or have changed, and also your value propositions. So right now, what I learned is we used to say that the shelf life of business models and business are shorter and shorter because of change of technology. But right now we also see because of change of customer behavior as a result of a pandemic. So I think more and more it is important to address this fact that we need to understand that value is changing, and therefore that there is a shift of business models. And we started to work on this book with many case studies about those business models that are changing, but we never realized that 6 of those shifts have been not only accelerated because of technology, but right now are also changing because the acceleration of changing customer behavior. So we're super happy that we had those case studies put together, because this is really a big, interesting insight into where you can find where is value next. And there are 2 ways to do that. One way is to look at your current business models better, but also to look elsewhere to find other options for growth. And as you see that all other companies are moving, this is a big inspiration source to see what is next. So thank you very much for your time. I really like to put this stuff together. It was also a journey for me in order to understand how we as a company can do a better job, and to understand what does it look like when we are out of the lockdown. And the key thing here is, once you start to put your focus there, and when you start to look there, then you will see more if you start to look there more often. So please have those strategic conversations about where value is changing. Have these conversations with your team, with your people, and with your customers. Thank you.